Here's one for you. All the Democrats are against voter ID, yet 82% of the public is in favor of voter ID, and 73% of blacks and people of color are in favor of voter ID as well. And 72% of registered Democrats are in favor of voter ID. This is a winning issue. Start there, folks, because the left cannot win without cheating. Welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. You know, never before, given the technology that can spread a lie faster than ever, have we ever, and when I say we, I mean every one of you, must fight for the truth and thus your sanity. Not only is technology a culprit, it is the indifference of people willing to hold liars accountable. When I say you have to fight for your sanity today, I'm not overstating the case. All of you by now have experienced the struggle to figure out whether something that you are seeing is AI or the real thing, aren't you? So why would it be any different in discerning if something is a lie or not, particularly coming out of Washington, D.C. or any politician or the media today? Well, that is the condition of our world, and many of us are guilty of allowing the lie, when exposed, to go unpunished. There is no accountability, and you're the people that are supposed to be holding everybody else accountable, particularly for a lie. A politician gets caught in a lie, and you just brush it off and vote for him or her for re-election. Well, in my podcast and in the monologues that I give, it involves constant vigilance and keeping up with the news so that you can track what is real and not. Last Saturday, I had the privilege of meeting and talking with Laura Ingraham of the Ingraham Angle on Fox News at night. She was charming, as you would expect, but an attorney by trade, having clerked for Justice Thomas. In my discussions with her, she revealed that she too writes her own monologues, as do I. And when you do as much research as we do, you develop an innate litmus test for what is real and what is fake, what is true and what is a lie. And you learn who has character and those who you can trust and those that you shouldn't waste time on. I complimented her on how she always stays on point and target, which is something that you are trained to do as a lawyer. Ingraham is always spot on as to the real issues at hand, when most things are mere distractions from the important stuff. Now, talking about distractions, I don't know about you, but after nearly 10 days of wall-to-wall coverage of Guthrie's, the Guthrie kidnapping, or I guess I should say abduction, have any of you asked, is there anything else going on in the world? I mean, Fox News is as guilty of this as well as any of the other stations. Like the stock market surpassing 50,000 for the first time in history, or what's going on in Iran, or Venezuela, or Ukraine. I guess they just all disappeared, didn't they? Because that's all we hear, wall to wall, about Guthrie. Now, here's my point, and don't miss it. While I'm sorry for the grief the family is going through, so are thousands of others, maybe some in your own families. People, seriously, does this story deserve that much coverage to the exclusion of everything else? When this kind of thing happens, you can be assured that other things are being covered up. So here is your alert, which I will discuss more about later, but you have to become discerning as to when you are being manipulated. Just like a magician distracts you with one hand while the trick is being played with the other hand to distract you from what's really going on, be on guard. You are always being distracted and emotionally manipulated to sometimes create a sour attitude in you when it should be anything but. I hope the Guthrie situation gets resolved and that the poor woman is returned home. But we have a world out of control to which we need to pay attention. The kind of excess with Guthrie is a red flag, as with other red flags that I want to teach you about and help you to recognize. Let me just insert this real quick as an example. In 2020, when our economy under Trump was historically at its highest, you were manipulated into thinking it was otherwise, and you focused on transgender and became hyper-emotional. And what did you do as a result? You voted for Biden and got the highest inflation in decades. And you went broke, and you were suffering. and that suffering lays at your feet. Now, as the old saying goes, that the lie can make it around the world before the truth can put its pants on, it is so true and sad. Please hear me out on this and let it percolate in your mind through the day and the days to come. So much of our unhappiness today stems from you allowing lies to live rent-free in your mind. You don't even bother to even ask anymore if something is true or not, if it comes to you over the news or from a politician. And don't forget that many people benefit from you believing the lie and the resulting misery that you're in. Here's an example where you traded the truth for a lie. And let me repeat again what you did in 2020. It is a statistical fact that during President Trump's first term, the U.S. was experiencing one of the greatest economies in its history. And you believed the lies of the left, you were distracted, and you voted in a man visibly in mental decline. In that 4 years under Biden, you suffered the highest inflation in over 40 years, while the Democrat left went on a spending spree, paying off all of its supporters. And in Minneapolis, and particularly Minnesota, that's a perfect example too, to the tune of in excess of $9 billion that you were ripped off. And you have the audacity to complain about affordability? You brought it on yourself. Now, the Democrats want you to get hooked on the term affordability, when that is the consequence of allowing yourselves to believe their lies in 2020. Don't be like the well-worn-out term in the Bible that the dog always returns to its vomit. Stop making the same mistakes over and over. Protect yourselves from the lie, regardless of its origin. Now, your happiness lies between your ears and how you process the facts and information with which you are bombarded with every day. Now, if you are an atheist, I really have no solutions for you there, because you lack the solid foundation necessary upon which to accurately analyze the world around you so as to come to a proper conclusion and to sift out the lies that are being told to you. Now, I want to segue to an important and current topic that affects the nation, but it has its roots in Kentucky. And we are in the process of taking care of that problem, which I will get to. But first, I want to remind you of the ancient story of the Trojan horse. Trojan horses is a story too many Republicans have still not learned. We have the likes of Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District, whose district voted for Trump 67%. Yet he votes against the president every opportunity he gets, particularly on major pieces of legislation. Then we have the former governor of Ohio, John Kasich, who preaches from the Democrat playbook better than the Democrats. And he has now become irrelevant, but was at one time going to run for president. He was another Trojan horse, and he's been in the news of late, spewing his lies and deception. Then we have Senator Tillis from North Carolina, who thankfully is not running for re-election. Now, these are all Republicans, but he too takes every opportunity to echo Democrat talking points, particularly with regard to immigration. Too many Republicans never learned how to play chess, particularly political chess. Then let's not forget Senator Langford from Kansas, whose voting record in opposition to Republican principles and undermining our country by wanting to give amnesty to illegal aliens, and that's just the beginning. His record is atrocious. Then, of course, we had the Marjorie Taylor Greene fiasco. Once thought to be the conservative darling and superstar, well, we found out that her skin and intellect were as thin as tissue paper, and she decided to resign with the Republican majority in the House being so razor thin. No loyalty there, folks. It is noteworthy that she decided to resign early, but only after she had qualified to secure her pension. You see, I am an equal opportunity criticizer, and I go after the Republicans as well as the Democrats because, hear me out, if you are in elected office, you are to be a servant of the people and not serve yourself. You're not representing yourself, you're representing the people. And too many don't do that. They all have some kind of a theory or an agenda or philosophy that they're following, as opposed to dealing in real time and in reality. Thus the name of my book, America's Systemic Psychosis being a detachment from reality. But the bottom line is these national Republican meetings and conferences that we have, the faithful who are gathered must be taught that the vetting process for Republican candidates must be much more rigid than they have been in the past. And because too many that are coming in are nothing more than Democrat retreads, or as I call them, Trojan horses, ready to open the gates to the enemies to destroy the city from within. Given all those who I've just listed should be sufficient cause for the vetting process for Republican candidates to be overhauled. You don't see these sorts of defections or disunity within the Democrat Party. Now, given the Civil War 2.0 that I've been talking about that we are in, we can no longer afford traitors within our own ranks. So we've got to start being more vigilant as Republicans, Christians, conservatives, and we've got to start exercising that vigilance more tightly than we have been. We've been lazy and slothful, and we've got to stop. So back to what we are doing in Kentucky to cure a problem that has impacted the country. Yes, what happens in one part of the country does affect the others, particularly politically, because nothing is a local election anymore. Everything's national. Last week, I hosted a fundraiser for President Trump's endorsed candidate to replace that traitorous, narcissistic, and sanctimonious Thomas Massie. The fundraiser was for Ed Gallrein, a Class A patriot and team player who will honor the will of the people in Kentucky's 4th District, but this former SEAL Team 6 member will not jeopardize the rest of the country by opposing his constituents or the president, as we have seen from Massie. Massie was and is a massive mistake that has to be corrected, and we can correct that in May. Now, you hear me preach all the time as to what you can do to save your country. Well, aside from what I do daily and weekly with my website and podcast, I'm making calls and holding events, and this is how you can make a difference. It doesn't need to be a huge event. It can be a morning coffee with a handful of friends or neighbors, or maybe a luncheon. There are numerous ways that you can make a difference. As with Nike, just do it. Now, here's a news flash that may be old by the time this podcast gets posted, but I do not want the significance to be lost. Listen up. Kentucky's sitting Congressman Andy Barr and Nate Morris, both who are running to replace Mitch McConnell in the Senate, have both come out with endorsements for Ed Gallrein and against the traitorous Republican Congressman Thomas Massie. That is rare, but Kentucky Republicans have awakened to the danger and betrayal that Massie has been to his voters and the state and the nation. If ever you had any doubt, then when other Republicans in the state are endorsing his opponent, then you know it's time for Massie to go. And those in the 4th District need to get organized and prepared to vote in the May primary coming up. This is not a local election, like I said. This has national implications. So to all my friends and listeners in the 4th, get up out of your chairs and start making plans and have coffees, lunches, or even bigger events if you can, as your country and president need you. President Trump and his agenda is on the ballot in May in Kentucky, so treat it accordingly. Kentucky's 4th District, for those who live there, goes from East Louisville up to Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a very long, slender, gerrymandered district. And if you are in that area, remember that 67% of you voted for Trump. Massie has betrayed that confidence and trust that you placed in him. It's time to bring Massie home and send a patriot and a true representative of the people in the 4th to Washington, D.C., and that's Ed Gallrein. Well, here's some good news for you. My application of common sense, along with some of my brethren legislators, has paid off. A couple of years ago, when the transgender craze was destroying children's lives, I went to my legislators and said, pass a law where the children could sue the parents, the doctors, and the hospitals once they become adults, because children cannot give informed consents, folks. And if adults act so irresponsibly and cause such grave harm to children through gender surgery, then they should have to pay for it. Just recently, a jury awarded a transitioner, I believe it was in New York, $5 million. Well, in Kentucky, we did pass such a law. And I hope that anyone related or associated with committing such horrendous acts upon children find their lives as destroyed and bankrupt as they caused for the children that they abused. Anyone that would do that is a monster in my book and is dangerous to society, and they need to be nullified in the sense that their punishment should be so extreme that they are never placed or allowed in another position to do such harm again. I'm gratified that other states around the country are now doing the same thing, but it was just the application of common sense, getting off your butts and doing something that changed the laws to protect the children. So now the consequences are going to be, as I predicted. The medical societies are pulling back from doing these types of surgeries. Insurance companies will not cover doctors or hospitals because the premiums will be staggeringly high if the insurance is available. It's all about the money, folks. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and you're seeing this transgender craze fading. But the people that got caught up in it, you should not forget. Don't forget these people that pushed it. You need to let that sink in and sear into your memory such that these people are never allowed in any position of authority again. I know this type too well because I find it in politics where some of the worst advice is given. But you find these bad pennies popping up again and again, and they never learn their lesson. These are the types of folks that must be ostracized from society. Don't forget and don't let them have anything to do with any authority, and don't let this type of insanity grip us again. Now, here's another install of what a Democrat is. The Office of the Tennessee District Attorney General's Conference has released its annual state immigration report revealing that in 2025, illegal immigrants committed, get this, 2,183 violent offenses, including 41 homicides, 145 sexual offenses, 11 child rapes, and more. Yet the Democrats riot, protest, and shut the government down in an attempt to stop ICE from arresting and removing these alien criminals. How much longer will we tolerate the overt insurrection and treason of the Democrat Party? To my Republican colleagues, you don't have to take the whole of the Democrat Party on at one time. You focus like a laser beam on one of these far-left, radical, leftist Democrats, and then you discredit them. You humiliate them in the eyes of their constituents and push them out of office. So say you don't have to go for the whole party, you take one at a time. And if you make enough of an example of that one, then it's going to spread to the others and they're going to be more fearful about repeating the same offense. And that will cause the rest of them to shut up. Their colleagues will take note and think twice as to the consequences of doing things like calling ICE Gestapo and murderers. The book called Confrontational Politics, written by H.L. Richardson years ago, laid out the plan and strategy to deal with the radical left. I, for one, purchased one for every Republican member of the Kentucky State Legislature. This is a plan and strategy that's needed in every state in this country. Historically and statistically, it has been proven that it has never taken a majority vote to influence and sway and control your government. Wake up. Historically, the 3% rule says that it only takes that much of a persistent and tenacious part of the population to turn the culture around for the good or the bad. For decades, the bad have been winning. Folks, it's time to get busy. I don't need an army, just a handful. You want to get rid of the bad actors? Here is your opportunity. My articles are loaded with examples, and I call these people out by name all the time. Do the research, form your groups, organize, and spread the truth that already exists out there, and it exposes these imposters. It has to be a steady and consistent drumbeat, and you have to confront them with uncomfortable questions that they can't answer. Here's one for you. All the Democrats are against voter ID, yet 82% of the public, and this is polling across the board. 82% of the public is in favor of voter ID, and 73% of blacks and people of color are in favor of voter ID as well. And 72% of registered Democrats are in favor of voter ID. This is a winning issue. Start there, folks, because the left cannot win without cheating. Well, here's a quick lie to dispense with. As I've said it before, and I'll say it again, this narcissist Ty Cobb, who spends too much time, as you can see, in front of the mirror curling his stash, needs to spend more time with the truth and less time trying to spread lies about Trump. Shame on him as an attorney making claims about Trump that are patently unprovable. But you see, he gets face time on CNN. When the lie rears its ugly head, you have to whack-a-mole it. You have to beat it down with the truth and discredit those who are spreading the lies. And before you know it, their face won't be on the TV screen anymore, and they won't be spreading the lies. Now, as with all my podcasts and writings, I tell you the problems that we face, those causing them, and the lies that you are being told. But also, I give you an action plan to combat that which threatens your well-being, your right to live a peaceful and prosperous life. Well, as a partner with the Conservative Partners Institute, CPI for short, that is centered there in D.C., right close to the Capitol and Capitol Hill, I had the privilege of attending the Midwinter conference down in Miami last week, and I met up with some of my congressional friends and leaders from around the country. This group provides tremendous resources for the conservative members of Congress and the president's staff. I get to hear and talk with them about what's going on unfiltered by the biased media. We meet over breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's when you can really get into some substantive conversations and when you are away from the distraction of the crowds. Before I get too far into my experience this time, I want to encourage you as part of your action plan to look into joining this group or groups like it, and maybe even attending one of the CPI's conferences, as this is where big differences are being made and important policy decisions and discussions are being had and action plans being put into place. Now, one of the most powerful people in the country today, outside of the president, is Russ Vought, the president's director of office management and budget, seen here with me at the conference. This is where major changes are being made and implemented to undo the destruction the Biden administration did to this country. Folks, if you only knew what the Democrat left did during Biden's mental incompetence in his 4 years in office, you would be demanding treason trials. And that is no hyperbole. But that being said, I want to give you some information that Russ gave me. His name's Colin DeMarco, 26, and he was arrested after allegedly traveling to Vought's office home in Virginia. Can you imagine that? Well, I keep telling you the left, the Democrats, are the mentally ill and intrinsically violent people. I say it time and time again, and when you look at it, whether it's Minnesota, no matter where it is in this country, all the violence is coming from the left. When you disagree with them, they get violent. They cannot tolerate dissent, just like all good Marxists. Well, in the discussions with Russ, he advised that the changes that the Trump administration is implementing are tremendous, and it really shocked me. For example, based on the plans they have put into place, we will have dropped the debt from $32 trillion to just over $18 over the next 10 years. And this is already in place. This is a plan already in place. And so many of us were worried about this $30-some trillion debt that we have racked up. Well, they've already got a plan in place to bring it down to 18 in just the next 10 years. This is just one of the solid and foundational things being done to place the country back on a solid financial footing that Biden destroyed. We have now gotten back the power to defund bastions of liberal support through their fraud and corruption that we have been seeing and has been uncovered across the nation, which basically, as we recently saw through the disclosures in Minnesota and Minneapolis, the Democrat funding packages are being rescinded. We are now seeing the financial fraud of the Democrats and how they have been supporting themselves. They create a program for a fake cause that is not needed, and then they appoint their friends to manage it, or should I say mismanage the program, and then they siphon off billions like they did in Minneapolis and Minnesota with the Somalis. Now, Russ also advised that they have eliminated 129 regulations for every new regulation. Wow, that's incredible. This is astounding because originally they were only hoping to get rid of 6 regulations per every new regulation that was implemented. For all of you out there trying to run your own businesses, this is a blessing to you. You will also be benefiting from those regulation cuts in the near future, but neither the Democrats nor the media want you to know about this. We shut down Elizabeth Warren's weaponization of the EPA regulations that she used to punish companies. We are cutting off the federal funding of the corruption in blue states. Many don't want to accept this reality because it is difficult to think that we allowed this to happen. But the Trump administration and Russ Vought, they're doing a great job of dealing with it. A Democrat Party that slowly was being taken over by those committed to a communist ideology, and they are drying up their money pool. And what they're accomplishing and what Russ Vought is accomplishing was astounding. We found that the Democrats have been using any means necessary to reach their goal of permanent control. They will destroy the country, as Russ said, but it is a constant fight, he warned us of. These are deeply entrenched people, and particularly in the deep state. And the reason they are so extreme in what they are doing and saying with the lies that you hear in the media every night and that are so transparent is because they know that if Trump succeeds, then that will be the end of their goal of turning the country into a socialist state like Mondami wants to do in New York. Now, while Russ is a genius and great things are being achieved, we are in the fight of our life as a country. There is no way out but through it, and that is what I have been preaching to everyone. There is no alternative. We can't sit back on our couches anymore. We have to get out there and fight. Now, another presentation that was given that we learned about in the conference down there in Miami was from Sean Davis, CEO and co-founder of The Federalist, who gave a sobering analysis that also explains why the problems we face are so difficult to overcome, and that is because you have to own the airwaves before you can win the battle on the ground. That was a really profound statement. The left owns the airwaves and has for decades, and we let that happen too. It was only until the internet and with conservative voices rising that we have been able to advance on the ground with some of our elected officials and our office holders. That is why I do what I do with my website, writings, books, and the podcast. Either you use your rights or you lose them. I'm speaking uncomfortable truths to thousands and thousands across the country in the hopes of saving them from their own indolence in the process of saving the nation. As Sean said, we can no longer let the left media set the agenda as to what is discussed or to determine what the hot topics are going to be. Just like I was discussing earlier with regards to the obsession with Guthrie over the last 10 days. Don't let them set the narrative as they did in Minnesota or with the Epstein documents. You see, that is what I and so many others are accomplishing through these podcasts and with independent journalism, and that is denying the left the monopoly that they have had for so long. You have allowed yourselves to be manipulated because you wanted to be spoon-fed. You want others to set the agenda and to tell you what is important and what to think. As Sean also said, we need to be training an army of Nick Shirley. He's the guy who brought down Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota with the disclosure of all the billions of fraud and money lost that was given to the Somalis. Think about this. Nick Shirley, in his 20s, single-handedly brought down not only a governor, but the whole Democrat cram syndicate via the Medicare scams and daycare scams. Here I am with Nick. I had the pleasure of meeting him, and I'm proud to say I had an intriguing one-on-one conversation with this young man who has put a nation to shame. So what are you doing with your life while this young man is saving your freedoms and billions that you're paying in fraud through your tax dollars? How many of you are as brave as this young man? He now has to have security because they, the left, again, want to kill him. But folks, isn't that what I have been telling you for years as to the nature of the left and who they are and how violent they are? Given the power that the left want, and that is power over you, they will end your life if need be. Stop playing around with them. We are, as I have said many times, in Civil War 2.0, and we need more Nick Shirleys. But my fellow Americans, when it takes a Nick Shirley, a 20-year-old, to do what so many of us should have been doing all our lives, we need to hang our heads in shame. Well, after my conversation with Nick, he knows that I'm in the fight with him and he's not alone, and I have offered my help to he and his father as this young independent journalist is uncovering the corruption that so many of us should have caught with just a modicum of diligence. At the end of the day, folks, the left is the enemy. Me and Nick and dozens of others are trying to keep the left from determining the narrative, and we are spreading the truth and uncovering the lies. We need your help, as it is expensive and it's time-consuming. And we do place ourselves at risk because the left hates the truth and hates those who speak it. So we need you to share our information and our websites with your family and your friends. Get involved that way and start putting to use the action plans that I've already given you. Okay, well, that's enough content for today. Please do yourself a favor, your family, and this nation. Join the fight. If you have no love for the truth, then you have no love for the Lord. And He commanded us to spread the truth in all its forms and to speak the truth. So with that, and until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.